All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the School Safety Community Information Session hosted by the Office of Community Engagement. During this session, we will have school division experts, public officials, and community partners who will discuss current programming, procedures, and best practices to ensure a safe learning environment. Our goal for this evening is to provide information that will be helpful for our school community to understand the school safety measures that have been implemented in the division. In addition, participants will have an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the presentation part of the session. The agenda includes an introduction from our moderator, Dr. Helen Dunn, Deputy Public Affairs and Strategic Communications Officer, a welcome from Albemarle County Public Schools Superintendent, Dr. Matthew Haas, presentations from our esteemed panelists who will be introduced next by our moderator, question and answer session, and Dr. Irizarry, Director of Equity, School, Family, and Community Relations, will close out our time together with final thoughts and next steps. We appreciate you spending time with us. And now I will turn it over to Dr. Dunn.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm so happy that you've joined us for this really important ACPS information session on school safety. As Dr. Kaiser just said, I know this is a topic that's really important to all of you. So I'm delighted to see we have a good audience this evening. And as Dr. Kaiser said, I am Helen Dunn. I'm the Deputy Public Affairs and Strategic Communications Officer for ACPS. So I'll be moderating tonight. Before I introduce our panelists, I just wanted to give Superintendent Dr. Matthew Haas a second to say a few words. So Dr. Haas, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dunn. And I just want to take a moment to welcome all of our students, our staff, our families, and all of our special guests to this presentation tonight. I hope you find it, the information that we provide to be hopeful, useful, and true, and that you walk away with a sense of confidence about what we have in place to keep our students, our families, and our staff safe in our schools. So if I could have someone advance the slide for me. So just to provide a little bit of background about Albemarle County Public Schools, sometimes when you're attending a school, you may not realize just all the schools that we have in the community. We've got 24 schools, several regional centers, and several academies and centers and programs all around our 726 square mile county, the 6th largest county by land in Virginia. Next slide. This is our student enrollment. Right now we're at 13,749 students. Our school system is growing. Over the beginning of the pandemic, we lost enrollment. But since then, over the past 2 years, we've grown by 377 students, and we're projected to be above our 18-19 enrollment when we start school next fall. So we are a growing school system. These are, this is some data around our students who need extra time and support. And in terms of international diversity, we have 96 countries of origin for our students and 73 languages spoken. We have nearly 2,700 employees. And sometimes people are surprised to know that nearly half of all of our employees are in our classified staff, not in instruction. And right now, this is where we have some critical shortages, including our bus drivers. Just some data to share with you around the services we provide every day, breakfasts and lunches, over 10,000 miles of driving safely, class sizes that are very low through the efforts of our school board to give our teachers an opportunity to work with individual students. We have a robust technology program with one-to-one laptops for grades 3 through 12, and we serve 239 students who are homeless in our Families in Crisis program. Class of 2022, we outperformed the rest of Virginia in terms of our students earning advanced studies diplomas, our overall graduation rate, and we had a much lower dropout rate as well. Three current challenges that we have right now are our ongoing opportunity and achievement gaps. Our math and reading results on the standards of learning assessments are above the state average when you look at our overall data, but for all of our separate demographic groups based on race, class, special capacities, we are below state averages. And that's a challenge for us that we are working on. Also, student mental health support is a current challenge, and staffing shortages. While we started the year with only a 2% vacancy rate for all of our staff, we have a lot of work to do to retain our staff and to keep attracting the great talent that we're used to here in Albemarle. And three bright spots. And you saw earlier our graduation rates for 2022. We topped the state overall, but we also outperformed the state in every one of our demographic enrollment groups. We outperformed the state of Virginia for graduation. Our attendance is dramatically improving over last year, where we were hovering around 91 to 92% daily attendance. And we are getting closer to our normal trends, getting closer to 95%. Right now, we're riding around 93, 94% this year. And then our growing enrollment. We are, again, a growing school system. Our kindergarten class that enrolled this year is our typical size of kindergarten class. So we look forward to having everybody coming back and attracting new families to our school system. These are just some useful links that you can use to find out more about Albemarle County Public Schools, our strategic plan, our how we hold ourselves accountable, a budget book, and if you're interested in school construction, you can look at our long-range planning advisory committee recommendations. And I think that's all I have to share. And again, I want to welcome everyone here tonight and thank you for your attendance.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Haas. And as our previous speakers have already mentioned, we have a really great group of panelists tonight, and they'll each share about 5 minutes worth of information related to their diverse roles in student safety and school safety, excuse me. So in a moment, I'll introduce them in the order in which they'll present. But before I do that, I did want to mention that we do have Spanish interpretation for this session. So if that's important or necessary for anyone, please do take advantage of that. We will also be recording this session and we'll be posting it on our ACPS YouTube channel. So you'll have access to this for as long as you need to. And we will be sending it out as well to the community so that everyone has an opportunity to watch if they haven't had a chance to be here tonight. Please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom. You probably see that there. We won't answer them until after all of our presenters have had a chance to have their 5 or 6 minutes to speak, but we will take about 30 minutes at the end of this session after our panelists have presented to answer questions. And so I just wanted to go ahead now and introduce you to our panelists. So from the University of Virginia and School of Education Partners, which we do have a partnership with them, we have Dr. Catherine P. Bradshaw, who's Professor and Senior Associate Dean for Research and Faculty Development, the UVA School of Education and Human Development. We have Dr. Stephanie Rowley, Dean, and William K. Keenan Jr., Professor of Education, UVA School of Education and Human Development. For ACPS Student Support Services, we have Dr. Jesse Turner. Many of you have already seen him on these webinars before. He's the ACPS Director of Student Services. We have Mr. Carl Murray, who's the School Safety Coordinator. He just joined ACPS this summer, formerly the Chief of Police for Piedmont Virginia Community College, also formerly police officer for Richmond City Police and Public Schools, and part of law enforcement at Virginia State University. So excited to have him on our safety and student services team now. Mr. Miles Nelson, who's the ACPS Coordinator of Mental Health and Wellness. From the Albemarle County Police Department, we have Detective Michael Schneider from ACPD. And finally, we have, we're very lucky and fortunate to have two of our Virginia legislative representatives. So State Delegate Sally Hudson, who's from the Virginia House of Delegates, the 57th District, and Senator Deeds, who's from Virginia Senate's 25th District. So I am going to turn it over to our panelists now, and we will come back in a little bit for questions afterwards. And I think Dr. Bradshaw, you'll be our first to present.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank
I believe
you.
Eric has a couple of slides for me. So thank you for inviting us to be part of this important panel to discuss issues related to student safety and well-being. While we're all focused most immediately on Albemarle County Public Schools, it may be helpful to understand some of the national trends as it relates to school safety and student mental health more broadly. Our local schools and school leaders are not alone as they face these challenges. When we look at some national data, this year has been a difficult one for many communities. In fact, the rates of mass shootings is up across the nation. It's not surprising that the rising rates of violence in many communities has also impacted our schools. It's also important to keep in mind, however, that statistically speaking, schools are a safe place for children and youth. They are less likely to be harmed by serious violence at schools than they are in other settings. Schools also provide a nurturing environment to learn and access resources and supports like mental health and counseling that they often don't have free access to elsewhere. We also see evidence of these benefits when we look at surveys of youth. On average, the vast majority of students report feeling safe at school and feel like they have access to adults they trust. However, we do have room for improvement, and things do seem to be shifting, particularly following the COVID-19 pandemic. You've probably heard about the troubling data on reading and academic performance post-pandemic. However, these academic data do not reflect the full scope of the problem, as research from across the country and here within the state show. In addition to these delays in learning, there are significant impacts on children's social and emotional development, as well as their mental health. As you can see on this chart here, prior to the pandemic, national data indicated that about 20% of youth had some type of mental health condition, such as anxiety, depression, or conduct problems. Of those problems, many of them go undetected, which is why school-based screening and mental health services and supports are so important. However, since the pandemic, national data indicate that there's a 40% increase in youth mental health concerns. Now, approximately 20% of adolescents are reporting symptoms of depression, and 25% of students are reporting symptoms of anxiety. Closer to home, we see in a recent report from JLARC, the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, which that report was just released this month. They say, and I quote, "Mental health issues are among students are concerning and prevalent," end quote, particularly among females. Similar to the national data, the rates of anxious and depressed symptoms were especially high among middle and high school students here in the state of Virginia. Data from Virginia and elsewhere across the US have also indicated increased rates of student behavior and discipline problems. This is also having a significant toll on our teachers and school staff, leading to burnout and turnover. Together, these data highlight the importance of addressing mental health. But the issue of school safety is complex, and student mental health and the impact of COVID-related closures are but a few of the contributing factors that we must consider as we discuss the path forward for ACPS. I'd like to turn now to some of the research-based approaches that are recommended for addressing these issues of school safety and mental health, many of which ACPS has already invested in, and we're eager to help them expand in the weeks and months ahead. As depicted here, my work on school safety and mental health is informed by a public health perspective, which is consistent by this multi-tiered model of prevention. Here in the state of Virginia, it's referred to as the Virginia Tiered Systems of Support. This research-based model acknowledges that we need universal tiered systems of supports. At Tier 1, these models and supports benefit all students, like effective classroom management and programs that promote social and emotional learning across all school settings, along with Tier 2 programming for students that need additional supports to be successful. At Tier 3, this may include tailoring of programs to meet student needs, perhaps the collection of screening data to inform school-based and family-based programming. There have been several rigorous studies by my team and others documenting that when implemented well, this model can reduce a range of challenging problems like bullying, conduct problems, and aggressive behavior, as well as improve positive outcomes for students like emotion regulation, school climate, and academic performance. On the next slide, I want to highlight the importance of social emotional learning. I've mentioned this concept a few times, and it's one that'll come up, I'm sure, in our discussion here today. So I wanted to provide a little bit more background on it. It includes 5 core competencies depicted here in the center. These are like building blocks that interact with each other, not only in childhood and youth, but across the life course. Children and youth need opportunities to learn to apply them in context, not only at school, but at home and in the community, as you can see depicted here in these layers. This illustrates the importance of the school, home, community connections and collaborations that support student well-being. I'll wrap up on this next slide by highlighting a couple of projects and programs that we're involved in that have been shown to be effective at promoting positive outcomes for students. These are all freely available and opportunities that we have to collaborate with ACPS through partnerships with the University of Virginia, such as promoting culturally responsive classroom management strategies, such as through our double check culturally responsive classroom model. These are opportunities to provide professional development for teachers about student engagement within the classroom. There are also opportunities to access mental health screeners for schools to identify students in need, as well as the Coping Power program to provide early intervention to address mental health problems in middle schoolers. These and other such programs can be freely accessed online through the National Center for Rural School Mental Health, which is based here at the University of Virginia. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dean Stephanie Rowley, who will talk further about the University of Virginia School of Education and Human Development and opportunities for collaboration and partnership with ACPS. Stephanie?
Thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here and to be talking about such an important topic as school safety, something that we're really committed to and really concerned about the trends, some of which Dr. Bradshaw just shared with us. So I'm the new dean at the School of Education and Human Development at UVA. I actually am a graduate of UVA. I was here in the 90s as a psychology student, developmental psychologist, and have been really happy to be back. So one of the very first things I thought about as I came back to Charlottesville was, really that I wanted to turn my attention to thinking about how to build authentic partnerships with our school, our local school communities. And so I've been so grateful to Dr. Haas for his time and generosity. So we've been able to get together a few times to chat about how we might partner together. And so I'm really looking forward to that. As Catherine was pointing out, we're in a sort of all hands on deck situation. This is a nationwide kind of a crisis that relates to school safety, mental health, supportive teachers, teacher well-being, staff well-being, et cetera. And so I am hopeful that we can find effective ways to partner so that we can all be in there together to support our community. So like I said, I just got here in July, and as part of my getting to know the school, in our very first faculty meeting, I said to the faculty, we engaged in an activity called the History of the Future. So the idea is to have people imagine a future 10 years from now. What do we want the headline about the School of Education and Human Development in the New York Times or the Washington Post to look like? What do we want people to say about us in the future? And it was so interesting because nearly all of the headlines that were generated by our faculty in our hopeful and aspirational future were about partnering with schools to address big issues, to think about the teacher shortage, to think about how to support students in mental health, to think about how we can support teachers in being as effective as they possibly can, and ways that we can strengthen these partnerships in order to accomplish those goals. And so I'm really excited to be here to think about it, because my job as dean is really to think about what we can put in place so that we can make those headlines come true. So some of the headlines were things like, we have so many teachers that, people are having to choose among, so many, or that we've erased opportunity gaps, that we've erased discipline gaps, and the like. So I'm looking forward to more of that work. So as Dr. Bradshaw pointed out, just thinking locally, both in terms of the county and also thinking about the state of Virginia, we know that 50 to 60% of our teachers are reporting increases in both the severity and the frequency of behavior problems among children. We know that we are also experiencing shortages in counselors and school psychologists. Talking with Dr. Haas, we're learning that oftentimes school counselors are having so much, you have so much work on the plate that they're not able to have the time for the sort of mental health counseling and those sorts of things that they would like to be engaged in. And so that, coupled with the declines in academic achievement, are really a recipe for a lot of stress, both for teachers and for students, and certainly for parents. And so I feel like our collective job is really to think about how we can add extra supports in those areas to sort of ward off some of the things that we are beginning to see. And I certainly hope that we can be a great partner in that. I'm learning that we've got a great history of partnership and collaboration with the county schools. And I was really excited to review the strategic plan for ACPS and to see the number of areas where our goals are aligning. Things like focus on access, equity, excellence, authentic kinds of partnerships, and thriving are things that I think are goals that we all share. And our faculty, as I mentioned, are looking for opportunities to share their expertise, to learn from you for sure, in shaping the future of the research that we engage on all kinds of issues, from socio-emotional learning to classroom management, supporting students with disabilities, promoting staff well-being, and policy implementation. So I won't list all of our faculty who are engaged in this work, but clearly Dr. Bradshaw is doing really important work on culturally responsive classroom management practices, socio-emotional learning, positive behavior support, and mental health that I think could be really useful. Many of you are familiar with the work of Professor Dewey Cornell, who's an expert on threat assessment. I know that he was invited tonight, but he's on sabbatical and was not able to make it. But Dewey sends his regards and says that he's really happy to help out with technical assistance or consultation in whatever way he can supply. Dr. Jessica Boniani has expertise in school climate, equitable approaches to discipline, and strategies for using data to inform decisions. And I could list many more. I just left a meeting with Professor Tish Jennings, who does amazing work on supporting teachers' well-being and mental health. So the bottom line is we're here to help. We're here to think through and puzzle through the issues that we're all facing. I'm again honored to be part of this community. I'm so excited to be here in Charlottesville, and am really looking forward to the work. So thank you.
All right, so I think we are ready for our next speaker, which is Dr. Jesse Turner. So Dr. Turner, if you're ready.
Thank you, Helen, and good evening, everyone. I know that probably many of you on the call this evening have heard me before talk about some of the things that we're doing here in the county, but for those of you who may be new to hearing me, again, I'm Jesse Turner. I'm the Director of Student Services. And one of the areas that I supervise in my job is safety for Albemarle County Public Schools. And this evening, I'm joined with two of the members of my department. That's Mr. Nelson, coordinator for the coordinator for social emotional health, and then Carl Murray for safety. And both guys will speak in just a few minutes. I did want to share what right now we're doing currently. Some of the interventions that we've put in place. You all have heard, some people have heard this before, but we have a program called Anonymous Alerts that has provided our stakeholders, all stakeholders, with an opportunity to reach out to individual schools and to members of central office to share any concerns regarding safety. We have found that on more than one occasion, because we've had parents and students and members of our community to stop what they're doing and to actually send us a message, that we've been able to do many different things in terms of stopping potential problems. We've in the past, we would typically not have that opportunity unless someone called the school or called central office. So we've been able to really put on the fast track, being able to address certain situations or problems before they really turn into a problem. So we continue to be excited with that. We're very proud of our students and parents and our community members who actually believe in that system and engage with us in that way. I'd like to also talk about our safety coaches. We have 8 safety coaches, and they are basically stationed at our secondary schools. But if need be, we do move them around throughout the school division. Here in the county, we're very big on building relationships. We have been able to collect some informal data at this point about how these individuals are doing. And one of the things that's clear that seems to resonate around the division is that many of our children find our safety coordinators as the adult that they connect with. So we're really big on making sure that in every school that there is an adult that a child can go to. And our safety coaches, that's one of their jobs and that's to build relationships. So we're seeing some gains there. We're seeing children feeling more comfortable because they have someone to talk to. And that's exciting because we know that if children are not comfortable, it's very difficult to learn. So we're trying to address that. And the last thing before I turn it over to Mr. Murray is that I'd like to talk about the crisis plans. I just want to say that all of our schools, after school programs, they have crisis plans. And although that's not something we want to think about a lot, having a crisis, it is comforting to know that there are plans in place and people are aware of them, and our leaders in our buildings are always poised to be able to employ those plans if need be. So we do keep safety at the forefront of what we're doing. It's one of the major priorities, and it's something that we continue to work on. It's always a moving target, and Mr. Murray is going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we have dialed up for or in the future. So Carl, if you will go ahead, please.
Once again, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Carl Murray. I'm the school safety coordinator for Albemarle County Public Schools. I just started in August. I'm very excited to work with the county. I'm thankful to Dr. Haas and Dr. Turner for allowing me to come and share my experience with Albemarle County Public Schools. I bring to the table 18 years of law enforcement, from police side, from patrol, from school resource, as well to being the chief of police at Piedmont Community College. So safety is a priority for me, and safety and working with the school system to enhance the safety. Two of the things that I would like to share that we're working on as a division is, one is that I know that cameras is a huge concern for a lot of people. So one of the things that the division is doing is that we are in the process of getting ready to put cameras. We already have cameras, but we're going to put more cameras in all the high schools, the middle schools, and especially the elementary schools. Outside the perimeter, inside the schools, in certain areas where you can see whatever goes on. So we'll have more cameras than we already have. Like I said, there's a focus that we're doing right now, particularly for the elementary schools, to have more visibility and security for particularly our elementary schools. The second thing that I would like to share with everyone that the county is doing is, right now we are being proactive and not reactive. And we are currently in a partnership with the Albemarle County Police Department, the Albemarle County Fire Department, and emergency management, and also with the county executive side. So we're working on a partnership right now, and we're going through setting up a training where we're talking about tabletops. We're talking about practicing and getting all the executives together and pre-planning an active shooter event in the event if that ever happened. And we're also in July talking about doing a full-scale event involving all those different parts. So this is the first time that all the different parts of the county are coming together to help make sure that we're keeping everybody safe. So I'm very excited that we're not waiting for something to happen, that we're actually being on top of it and getting started. So a lot of parties are involved, a lot of planning is involved as well, but we're moving forward. I was in a meeting about that earlier today prior to this meeting. So I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity that I have to come to Albemarle County Public Schools. And I'll go ahead and pass it on to my partner, Mr. Miles Nelson, the coordinator of mental health. Miles, you're up.
Thank you, Carl. So yeah, I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about our school-based mental health professionals and the expansion of our mental health services here within Albemarle County Public Schools. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So I was going to talk a bit about our impact of social emotional health on students recently, but Dr. Bradshaw did a great job of doing that for me. So thank you very much. So I'm going to get into how our school counselors relate to, and our school, not just our school counselors, but all of our school-based mental health professionals. And we have many of them, and how they support our students. So we have school counselors, we have SEL counselors, SAP counselors, safety coaches, and school psychologists. And I generally refer to all these individuals as our school-based mental health professionals, and also our school social workers. So we have seen a large increase in student referrals for anxiety, depression. We've seen increases in suicidal ideation, self-harm, and all of our mental health professionals are pulling together to support students as best we can. So our school counselors quickly build rapport with students and help them build coping skills to address areas of needs in their lives. These skills support students to help them develop the skills they need to be back in class to reach their full academic curriculum. This is a whole teaming process between all these different mental health professionals, and it goes back to that 3-tier system, the multi-tiered support system. So we have everything from tier 1, where we have started to introduce mental health first aid for teachers. And so right now we've trained about 200 teachers in mental health first aid. And so this is our tier 1 of how anyone can support a student's mental health. And then from there, we have started partnerships with Region 10, with Health Connect America. And so this is where we have our staff counselors and our community partners to provide services. Unfortunately, right now, Virginia is about 34 out of 51 in access to services for mental health services. And one of the struggles for families is when you need mental health services, trying to access mental health services when what we can provide in schools is not always enough. And so I have to say that our partnership has been wonderful in that we have been working diligently with these partners to increase access to mental health services outside of schools for students who are really struggling. So with that said, with our partnership with Region 10 and with Health Connect America, last year we had over 600 outpatient, or about 600 referrals. This year we're already up to about 425 referrals. More than half of these referrals are due to students feeling anxious or showing signs of depression. But due to the help we have with the partner with Region 10 and Health Connect America, we've been able to meet a lot of these needs. With that, some of the things, partnerships with all of these community partners, all of it kind of comes back to our cornerstone of our school counselors and our SEL counselors, being able to reach out to them. They're a great bridge and connection for parents to be able to reach out to ask for more resources. First thing that parents always ask me also is, what can parents do to help support their kids? And so generally I always have 3 recommendations for parents. So creating a sense of physical and emotional safety is 1. 2, encourage emotional regulation, and 3, strengthen relationships. And the reason why I say these over and over again is because one of the biggest factors for preventative factors for a student's mental health is having a trusted adult in their life. And so Dr. Turner mentioned this earlier with the safety coaches doing this, and it's all of our school-based mental health professionals. They work incredibly diligently to develop these relationships with students and build the relationships and help them develop the coping skills that they need. And so regardless of what else is going on, that they have a trusted adult who can support them and help them have better outcomes in the future. So again, with that, the creating a sense of physical and emotional safety. So it's providing a supportive environment, having predictable routines, offering opportunities for choice, senses of control, and clear and consistent expectations, and providing positive praise for behaviors, for encouraging emotional regulation, teaching and providing opportunities to practice self-regulation skills, including being able to identify feelings, manage emotions, and then when strengthening relationships, offering that extra time, and then also being able to be that model of what self-regulation looks like.
Thank you so much, Miles. And I think we are on next to Detective Schneider.
All right, so everybody probably wonders why is law enforcement and involved, and what's our role in the schools right now? Especially why is the detective involved and we don't have just somebody else from our admin team here? My role isn't just to come in and when something bad happens at the schools. Everybody thinks that, oh, the detective's here, somebody's going to jail, somebody's getting locked up, something bad has happened. That's not necessarily the case. Right now, we are working diligently with individual school admin teams to provide digital citizenship and online safety seminars to our high school students. We're mainly starting with high schools is what we're trying to do. And once we get in there, we'll maybe go into some of the other schools, maybe some of our lower school secondary schools. So far this year, we've been actually working with bus drivers. I've been partnering with Foothills Child Advocacy Center. It's one of our centers that we use to interview children. So we ask that patrol officers we ask them not to interview kids if it's at all possible. We are specially trained special victims unit detectives. We're trained in the Child First Protocol, which is a non-leading child-centered interview. We try to use that, and we also try to use Foothills to interview our kids. So I've partnered with them to do mandated reporter training for our bus drivers. We've done 2 of those seminars so far, and our bus drivers seem really open to that. They learn a lot of new things. It's more not just, hey, you need to tell us this stuff because you're required by law. It's look out for this stuff. You're basically our first line of defense, right? If something's happening to a child, the bus drivers see that. And we've really been partnering with them to try to get look out for our kiddos and try to help us out. And if something's going wrong, to report that to us. I've also been working with Mr. Murray. I know he only got here in August, but him and I, we had to become friends real quick, unfortunately, with some of the things that have happened at our schools. But him and I developed a working relationship very quickly. We communicate not just about bad things that are happening, but just really to bounce ideas off of each other. If something's going on, does this really need to be a police matter? Do we need to, get me involved to come in and talk to kids, or is this something that can be held on the school level? And I know a lot of parents in here are probably wondering, like, with all this stuff that's been going on, really what can happen to my kids? Are y'all just going to lock my kids up? And, for most things that happen in the school, no. Most of it I won't even be notified of because it's not criminal, or it won't rise to a level of being criminal for a juvenile, but it would be for an adult. We just view these differently. We take different approaches with our children, and the Commonwealth Attorney offices and the Criminal Investigation Division have an understanding of what we need to do with children if something were to happen. I know we've had, since August of 2021, we've worked 7 threats to Albemarle County schools. 4 of those resulted in arrest. 1 was warrants advised, and 2 have still remained unsolved. But of those 4, yes, juveniles were arrested because they made a threat to harm our students at Albemarle County schools and really caused chaos at our schools those days. So we did charge them. However, with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, they agreed that since this was first offense, really for all of them, it was first offense for all of them, that it would be taken under advisements of the courts to be dismissed. So it's not like we're trying to throw the book at them. We're not locking them all up. We are, we have to do what we have to do for student safety because we don't know if it's real or not. When a threat's made, we respond as if it is. So I'll keep working with Dr. Turner, his office, and Mr. Murray. I've got Mr. Murray's cell phone number. I'm not afraid to blow his number up if I need him. So we're trying our best to get in there and start teaching these kids really how to be safe online and what it is to be a good online citizen with their social media. So hopefully we can get that done this year.
Thank you, Detective Schneider. And I think we are on to Delegate Hudson now.
Thank you so much. And let me start by saying thank you to all of the incredible local education and law enforcement professionals that we have here doing this hard work in our school division every single day. My name is Sally Hudson. I serve the county in the House of Delegates. And our role in that more removed seat of lawmaking is to do our best to empower local officials with the tools that they need to intervene when something does go off track. And I think my high level message for the 5 minutes that I have is that I hope you know that the General Assembly has tried our best to be very responsive over the last 3 or 4 years with giving local law enforcement and educators more tools to be resourced and responsive in the event that there are safety threats. A lot of that work started in the wake of the Parkland shooting in 2018, when the General Assembly convened the Select Committee on School Safety, which held listening sessions all over Virginia and generated a bunch of recommendations that were geared toward empowering school districts to do more collaboration on a lot of different dimensions of school safety, whether that meant requiring evacuation plans that involved the local fire departments, or requiring plans for any architect that was involved in school planning to make sure that there were clear safety dimensions there as well. The threat assessment teams, the MOUs with school resource officers, all of that came out of the Select Committee on School Safety. And then especially in the wake of the Virginia Beach shooting, when after that summer, Virginia voters went to the polls with gun safety as the #1 issue on their minds. That was the top of the list in the 2019 elections. We did a lot of work on gun safety in the following General Assembly session. That was the first session where I was serving, and in particular made it possible for law enforcement to intervene, especially when it comes to people with a proven record of causing harm to others, and restricting access to firearms for those individuals. So for example, we made it possible to remove firearms for people with a proven history of domestic abuse, for people who've been convicted of violent hate crimes. So anybody who's been convicted of, say, assault on the basis of race or religion or misogyny. It's now possible to remove firearms from those people because we know that so often somebody who's violent in a small way can then become violent in a much bigger way, and that we need to take those predictors very seriously. We also created Virginia's system of extreme risk protection orders, which are commonly called red flag laws, which make it possible for law enforcement to remove a firearm from someone who's made clear threats that they're going to hurt themselves or someone else for a temporary period. So that's another important tool in the toolbox. We made Virginia the 14th state that has universal background checks, and we also extended the time that law enforcement have to complete them. We call that closing the Charleston loophole. As you may remember, after the shooting in Charleston, South Carolina, the shooter was able to attain a weapon because they sort of ran out the clock on their relatively short window for a background check. In Virginia, we now have more time for that to take place because we know that the background checks that take a little longer usually do so for a good reason, because there's something there that they're picking up. So that's been really important. I wouldn't say by any stretch that work is done. I would say one of the most important ways that we fell short in that session on gun safety was that Virginia failed to pass a ban on the sale of assault weapons and high capacity magazines. That was a bill that we passed out of the House. The Senate said no. I will say that was a very big frustration for me. I was in kindergarten when the federal government banned assault weapons many, many years ago. I was 11 years old for the Columbine shooting. So it was very difficult to understand that 20 years later, that was not something that the Senate of Virginia was ready to do. But it's a conversation we'll continue to come back at. I think the other thing is that there's some things that we can do to prevent violence and to make our schools safer by taking away access to weapons, but we also have to invest a lot more in our schools. And I do think that that's where the General Assembly has a lot more that we can do to invest in the counselors and the social workers, the mental health support services. The General Assembly is still not doing its fair share for school support staff to reduce those student ratios, bring caseloads down so that counselors and all of the hardworking folks in our schools can give individual students the attention that they really deserve. So my hope is that that's work we'll come back at in the upcoming session and continue to put more resources there for the folks who really are the eyes and ears and the first people there to support our students when we need it. So all that's just to say, I think sometimes, especially when it comes to gun safety, there is a lot of frustration at the federal level that we see a lot of inaction. At the state level, the General Assembly, for better or worse, has been very active on this work. So I hope that you know that if you're reaching out and you're contacting your local legislators, if you're engaging with us, that this is really a live ball in Virginia. And every year we're passing more measures to try to do better. So I hope that you will all continue to stay engaged with us because there's a lot more progress that we can make if we stick at it.
Thank you so much, Delegate Hudson. And Senator Deeds, I think you are up.
First, I want to thank Dr. Haas, and I want to thank Dr. Bradshaw and the leadership of Dean Raleigh. I learned so much about what you're doing, what's already going on. In the 21 years I've served in the state Senate and represented this area, the Albemarle County school system has continued to be one of the leaders in academically performance and the way you treat your children. The school should be a safe place where children are nurtured. And I see year after year that nurturing occurs in the Albemarle County schools, and I congratulate you on that. I also want to point out, and I think 2015, there were students that we passed a bill to require that mental health awareness be part of the health curriculum in the 8th and 9th grade, for 8th and 9th grade students. And that bill generated from Albemarle County students, Albemarle County high school students from all three of the main high schools in Albemarle County. So those children worked with us to get that bill passed. I'm very, very proud of it. We've got to do a better job of providing mental health services. Dr. Turner, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Murray, what you're doing in the schools right now, not only to ensure that the schools are safe, but ensure that children have access to services are so important. What Albemarle County is doing to promote mental health first aid instruction for teachers is important. We really need to do that on a statewide basis. We tried to get that bill passed a few years ago in 2020 and that's one of the things that the legislature would not agree to. But we'll try again. The way you're approaching that is important. I know there was a question about services for teachers too, and I think that is critical. One thing we saw before the pandemic, if you look at the data, you know that among the people who have serious mental illness, about 70% of those people first evidence serious mental illness between the ages of 14 and 24. Coming out of the pandemic, I think those numbers the ages are pushed down a little bit. We've seen a real crisis in mental health services among young people, and we have to figure out a better way to get those kids access to services as quickly as possible. As Delegate Hudson pointed out, we did a lot of gun safety legislation in 2020. We did some in 2021. There will be opportunities for us to do more. And I would suggest that if the assault weapon bill that the House passed had looked anything like the 1994 legislation that the federal government enacted, it would have passed the Senate. The reality is the bill was much broader and not enforceable. And we're in a different world now. Last year, or about the last June, this past June, the Supreme Court issued a New York gun case that really put an impossible standard on gun safety legislation that we're going to really have to be smart and figure out how we can pass bills that will pass the muster of scrutiny under that case. So we are in a different time. The legislature sets broad policies. Those policies from an educational standpoint are enacted by the State Board of Education and by the local school boards. There is no one size fits all with respect to every issue, and school divisions are left to try to figure out how to make the schools as safe and nurturing as possible. And I think Albemarle County has done a good job in that respect. But the reality is, for all the policy making that happens at the General Assembly, and Delegate Hudson was correct that we've not done everything we need to do in terms of what we pay for. Your former member, Steve Colazar, used to remind us of that every single year, multiple times every year. There are lots of things we need to do a better job of at the state level. But what we do need, we need to continue to need are your ideas and what best is going to work in your schools, and we need to hear from you. And so I'll thank you for including me in this forum, and I continue to need to hear from you. I need to know what you think about the issues that are going on at the state level and what Albemarle County needs.
Thank you so much, Senator Deeds, and to all of the panelists. You've been incredibly helpful and informative. And so we are going to take about 30 minutes to take questions from participants. We've had a few come in through that Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom, and feel free to keep sending those through. And we're just trying to answer in the order that we're receiving these, but do feel free to email to that superintendent office at K12albemarle.org email address if you feel that you have further questions or don't get an answer due to a lack of time. I do ask that if anyone has questions related to specific incidents, that they touch base specifically with school personnel as opposed to school division personnel. And that is probably the best way to get answers to those. But I am going to address the first question that's come through in the Q&A. And I think this really might be for any of our first several panelists. Could lockdown drills and actual lockdowns in reactions to threats be adding too much stress for students and staff? Could that stress and anxiety be a contributing factor to increased mass shootings at schools? So
Happy to jump
maybe
on that one, Helen.
Dr. Bradshaw or Dr. Turner, I wonder if the two of you, and I know this is a question without an answer, but at least some thoughts, I think.
I also wanted to, I believe Miles Nelson wanted to get in here too. So I didn't know if you wanted to start off, and I'll be happy to go in.
Please. Yeah, Miles. Absolutely.
Sure. Absolutely. So as Carl mentioned, we are partnering with the County Executive's Office. We're also partnering with ACPD with the new implementation for our critical incident responses. So we've partnered with Alice, and now we're doing trainings with them. And one thing we did was we started off small. We started off with one school at Baker Butler. There were a few news articles on it, but one thing that we did for the follow-up with that training for staff was we did this anonymous survey. We wanted honest feedback of how teachers felt, because this is a question we get asked quite often: is what is the mental health impact on teachers for talking about heavy topics such as school shootings? It is a heavy topic. It's hard, and it's not something anyone ever wants to talk about, but it's something important that we do talk about. And so we went through this training for 120 staff members, and after the feedback anonymous surveys, we couldn't follow up with a survey because we wanted anonymous. We want people to feel free to answer however they wanted. And the thing that we saw clearly from that survey from the staff at Baker Butler was that 99% of the staff felt empowered. People didn't feel anxious, they didn't feel scared, but they felt empowered, and they felt like they had actionable steps to take forward from that. And this is a staff only training. It's not something that we're pushing to students at the moment. That's something that we would want community responses and feedback on. So currently we're doing our staff implementation for the training, and we're doing it as thoughtful as we can, looking at recommendations from the National Association of School Psychologists on best practices for implementing these heavy drills, because it's, again, whoever wants to talk about school shootings, but it is something that unfortunately happens in our country. So we are taking proactive steps to make sure that we give people options and how they can best protect themselves.
My team and I have done some research on this topic as well, and you know, it's never a fun topic to go into schools and talk about this, but it is very important to make sure everybody is consistent and on the same page. And I think with some of the recent developments, there's become a lot of confusion. You know, what is the right code word? Where is it posted? How do we talk about this? And that confusion can carry down to the students and also to the parents as well. And I think coming up with a very consistent plan and making sure that that's communicated, the consistency is exceptionally important. And making sure that the students are understanding what's happening, and that they are able to communicate also to parents, because they'll go home and talk to their parents about this, and the parents can get confused as well if they are not prepared. So I think the best practices, as Miles was referencing, are very important to communicate to everybody why this is happening, that it is a drill, and that way when it is hopefully never a real life event, but that way everybody is very clear about this. I think this can be, you know, traumatizing for kids to have to go through these. And so you do have to use them very sparingly rather than too much practice, but having the staff really be aware of this. And sadly, after real life events, the practice can become triggering events for those that aren't even having those traumas. So having a trauma-informed approach to think about doing the drills is really very critical as well, because sadly there's so much exposure to other types of violence in society right now that even just practice for them can become a bit of a trauma-inducing experience. So these are very, very challenging. And so it's great that you're working with national experts in this, and that you're using best practices in the space. We have done some work on this in my own area as well. And this is actually one of those calls I get pretty regularly in that space. So I really am glad to hear that you're using evidence-based practices around how to do this work.
And Dr. Dunn, I don't have anything to add other than it is about preparation. We've what's been said tonight is spot on. You know, we just want to be prepared. We don't want people to be anxious because they don't understand what to do, just in case we have to do it. So.
Thank you, 3. And I think the next question might be also for Miles, possibly, although I think this is another one that could possibly be several people could address. So what is the plan to decrease utilization of drugs at schools, especially middle and high school, since there's usage on buses and in restrooms? Many students do not feel comfortable using the restrooms, and drug utilization equates to violence in many cases. So I think that maybe a Dr. Turner and Miles, Mr. Nelson at the beginning anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So some plans for decrease of drug utilization. So we have to know about it first. So once we do know that a student has some type of drug use, it is usually a consultation with parents and with students. And then we partner with Region 10. They have the Teen Intervene program, and then also support from school counselors, SEL counselors, and also our outpatient services, depending on the level of need. And then I'll let Dr. Turner address the discipline side.
Yeah, thanks, Miles. I think that education is really the key. When dealing with students and drugs, it's not about how much can they be suspended. Our young people now are being educated very early on in the wrong way through TV, social media, regarding drugs and what or how these drugs can have a negative impact on them. That drugs sometimes are more glorified than put in a light of being harmful. And I think that we need to keep that in mind. And it's not about suspending them, but trying to help educate them and get them up to speed in terms of what drugs can actually do to their bodies. I think when I hear about young people being afraid to go to the bathroom, I do believe, or the bathrooms, I do believe that those are the things that have to be and must be shared with school administrators. The principals, system principals need to be able to come together, and the staff, if they have security staff in their building, they need to come together and craft plans on how they're going to monitor the hallways, monitor the areas of the building where the bathrooms are located, to give those children extra support, because no child should be afraid to use the restroom because of drug activity. I mean, that's something that can be and should be addressed in the school. And Carl and I and everyone here in our office, we're willing to work with the schools to establish those plans.
And I don't want to spend too much time on the law enforcement side, because most of what we hear about drug use in the school, or if we start hearing those things, a lot of times it may be marijuana use, THC vapes. I hear about regular old vapes a lot at the schools, and that's something we do deal with. It's not something we charge for, but it is something we try to help the schools if necessary. I will say that the training that we're trying to push through with individual schools is kind of touching base on that. Not so much about drug use, and it's not going to be the old drugs are bad kind of spiel, or this is your brain on drugs kind of stuff. It's not that. That's not what we're doing. I think that they used to use that in the old DARE program, so that's not what I'm trying to do. But it does touch on that a little bit, and actually the glorification of it in social media. And the good thing is it meets the 9th grade SOL standards. So we're trying really to get in there and really tie this in with our schools. So hopefully we'll be able to do that and maybe curb some of that. I can't guarantee that it will.
Thank you, all 3. Probably again for Miles Nelson. So, but possibly others. So what corresponding mental health, and Senator Deeds already addressed this, and this probably does rise to a legislative level in some ways as well, but what corresponding mental health support is being made available to our teachers?
Yeah, so I'd say it's twofold. So first, one, we're providing teachers the skills and resources they need through mental health first aid training. So that's kind of our tier one approach of how to help anybody or help any youth in a mental health who's having a mental health challenge. The second part comes from our HR side, which is our EAP services. It's our employee assistance program. This is a program that offers 8 free counseling sessions to any employee who needs it on any given subject. So it is widely available to all of our employees. And then Michelle Bailey is our new wellness program coordinator for our staff. So for the HR side. So she has been corresponding. We're starting to work together to see what we can do to support staff more.
Thanks so much. Not sure if anyone else wanted to chime in on that. That was very,
Let me,
Yeah,
I'll
please.
just say that the mental health first aid is an 8-hour course that everybody alive would benefit from. It gives you the tools to recognize when a person's in crisis. But over the long haul, if we are honestly going to make teaching an attractive profession and defeat the teacher shortage, we have to make the jobs more attractive. And part of that means we have to give teachers the support they need. And once again, I see that Albemarle County is leading by providing those services through human resources, and thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Senator Deeds. And I would just mention, I did it this summer, the training, and I have 4 step kids, one of whom is 22, 3 of whom really are teenagers, and a 3-year-old. And I felt better personally just having done that. So I couldn't agree more. This is probably a Mr. Murray, maybe Detective Schneider. Are there or will there be initiatives to provide training opportunities for school staff, DSS, and ACPD regarding human trafficking of minor children?
Yeah, so a lot of people may not know, but there is a UVA run human trafficking task force in this area. It's made up of DSS partners, ACPD. I'm the detective on that task force, and a lot of medical and mental health providers are on that task force. We are working currently to build the task force up a little bit more, get more members involved, to do some train the trainer events so that we can get more people out to train our DSS personnel, school personnel, really anybody who wants to learn. And there's also going to be some awareness campaigns going around with this task force to really get the community aware of what's going on, what signs to look for, who to call for help. And we already have a protocol in place. Once we get a human trafficking victim coming in or survivor, we don't like to use the word victim, we like to use the word survivor. Once they come in, we can respond. We have a list of who to contact me, DSS, especially if it's a minor victim, minor survivor. We have all the protocols in place to investigate that right away and get that person safe, because that's the main goal, is to get someone safe right away, get them out of harm's way, and then we can try to investigate what's going on. But their safety is paramount in that. As for the trainings, hopefully it'll come forward. I do teach, as part of mandated reporter, I do teach our bus drivers human trafficking, what to look for, what you see, really just, hey, look at these signs if you see something like this, because bus drivers see the kids every single day, most of the time twice, and they're with them first thing in the morning and the last thing at the end of the school day. So we've been training them as what to look for. I do talk about it in the presentation that I'm trying to make for our schools. I talk about it with our kids to just make sure that they're aware of, hey, what their friends are going through, are they going through it, and who to report to. So we are working on that. There is a task force in the area, and we're trying to get that moving so we can get some trainings out and get some awareness out as well.
I just would like to add to that is that, first of all, I think that's a great question that was asked. Detective Schneider, he pretty much covered it all. So I just would like to reiterate that we have a great working partnership with Albemarle County Police, and that when he gets that training up and going, I think that would be beneficial for us to get partnered up with them with that, so that not just our bus drivers, but our teachers, our counselors, our safety coaches, any staff that deal with any of our kids, if they have, they can know what those signs are that Detective Schneider talked about, or what are those signs may be that may relate to human trafficking. Then that way, that will help out. So looking forward to partnering again with the police department on that to help keep our faculty and students safe, as well as help our staff make sure we know more and get more training about human trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you both. So next, and probably Dr. Turner, you would be best positioned to do this. So I speak with teachers from schools across the country, and quite a few have mentioned that they felt unsafe in their buildings. Some reasons have been frequent fights, dysregulated students who are physically larger than them, calling the office for support and having no one come, kids being brought right back to their room after the teacher sent them out for being disruptive, staffing shortages leading to large numbers of kids in one area with no supervision, etc. Every one of them said that they spoke with their administrator, but the unsafe environment and unsafe feeling were not resolved. What is the protocol and procedure for ensuring that our staff feel safe and heard when they have safety concerns, when admin don't seem to be responsive? I fear we will continue to lose excellent educators who aren't willing to put themselves at risk any longer.
Well, let me see where I'll start. There's a lot there. Part of feeling safe as a teacher is it depends on the type of relationship the teacher has built with students. That helps a lot. Also, there has to be a focus there from the school administration to make sure that there are plans in place to help teachers feel safe. Again, that's something that has to be addressed by the school. Every school is different. Every school can possibly have a different demographics of students, and the plans have to be crafted based on their clientele. But it has to be important to the school administration and the teachers in general. Like it's not keeping teachers safe is not just for school administration. Everyone has to have a part in making sure that people feel safe, students and the adults.
Thank you, Dr. Turner. So next, this is probably for Miles, maybe few other people might be interested in speaking out on this, but given the heavy caseloads of counselors, and as we work to get more resources to address that, is there an opportunity for counselors to lead groups of kids in cohort-based health groups to provide support for those students willing to participate?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Helen. Or not, Helen. Participant, thank you.
I'll take credit. Thank you.
Yeah, so honestly, this is something that our counselors, our SEL counselors, staff counselors, it's a core integration. It's our tier 2 piece. So going back again to Ms. Bradshaw's presentation, Dr. Bradshaw's presentation of those 3 tiers, we have our tier 1 service, and I only had 5 minutes, so I couldn't go very in depth, but small groups is a tier 2 process for us. And so it is something that we do work with students to identify groups that would help support. So students who have experienced grief or loss, we might have a group to help support those students. Again, all small groups and all those pieces go through parent permission, and because it's always a collaboration between family and students. And so that is a large integration between our school counselors, our SEL counselors, our mental health professionals in the school.
Thanks, Miles. I think you are very popular tonight because I think this next question might also be for you, but probably indicative of the massive significance of mental health in our schools these days. So once school is in session or all doors locked, so this is really Jesse, Turner, Carl, and Yeah, this next one is for Dr. Turner and Mr. Murray. Once school is in session, are all doors locked? If so, how do you prevent doors being propped open, et cetera? Do you have cameras on all doors and someone in constant observation?
Well, staff and students at all of our schools are directed to never prop doors open. I mean, that's not something that we allow. Now, if doors are propped open, as soon as staff finds a door propped open, it's shut and locked. And Mr. Murray talked earlier about the cameras. You know, again, we're in the process of adding cameras throughout the entire division. But currently we do have cameras on some of our doors. So we are able to see when or who possibly props a door open. But our staff, they're educated by school administration regarding the seriousness of not leaving doors open, unlocked, or propped.
No, Dr. Turner, if I might add, we went through a process this fall to issue new ID cards to our teachers and other employees that are swipe cards. So what we're trying to do is eliminate someone's need or feeling that they need to prop a door open so that they can get back into the school, particularly elementary teachers. You know, if they take students out to the playground or they're doing other activities, it can be difficult if you don't have a way just to get back into the school. So we're trying to be proactive with that, make sure everyone's got ID cards that are the type that we swipe. All the exterior doors of our schools now, staff can use their ID cards to swipe back in. So our intent is that it will make it so that people don't feel like they need to prop a door.
Thank you both. All right, so probably Dr. Turner, Mr. Murray, Detective Schneider, I would say, but really anyone maybe. School safety is multifaceted, and I'm so glad to hear the school district is taking such a comprehensive approach. Thank you. One aspect is, in worst possible case, is having someone on site that can immediately stop the threat. Why does Albemarle not have armed security when other surrounding school districts do?
You know, I'm not really sure if this person is trying to allude to why we don't have school resource officers. But you know, the only thing I can really say is that our school board decided not to have school resource officers, and that's where we are right now. That's just where we are currently. I can't really speak on what's being done in other school divisions. I don't know, but that's what our board decided.
Yeah, and Mr. Green, just responding a little bit further to your question, please do feel free, and we can throw the email address in the chat again, where you can send questions along those lines. In I think June of 2020, Dr. Haas, if I'm not mistaken, our school board did vote to take SROs out of schools. So that's, as Dr. Turner said, that predated him, and I don't know if anyone else wants to speak to that here.
I would just, we put extra money in the budget last year this past session to allow localities the flexibility if they want to use SROs. But the reality is, you looked at what happened, the terrible tragedy that occurred in Uvalde, Texas. There were multiple armed officers in that school. That school division had its own police department. There were lots of guns in that school, and they didn't solve the problem. I'm not convinced that an SRO is going to be the panacea for any threat and violence at a school. And I don't think the evidence will support that at all.
Thank you, Senator Deeds. Do staff at schools and central office have a printed list of how to react to threatening phone calls, what to ask, what info to give and not give? So we have a couple folks who might be well positioned for that.
Since no one else is answering, I just will say, yes, they do.
Yeah, I can say that we were hit really hard last year with several threats to our schools. And it was a learning curve for a lot of us. I mean, we had several there almost weekly. It felt like we were doing at one of the schools, this was happening. Still can't say why it was happening. I mean, all the kids we talked to thought it was just funny. We didn't, and I don't think the community did either. But we worked with staff. I actually really learned a lot from the administrators. We kind of tag teamed it together to figure out what to do, and worked out plans for them. As soon as something happens where a threat is made, they started calling us immediately. It wasn't, hey, let's see if this is even real. We took that out of the school's hands and said, it's ours to investigate. Let us determine if this is real or not. So we don't really delay and find out what's going on. We can find out who this kid is, or if it is a kid, or who this person is, and keep our kids safe the next day. I also put out several things within our department and on the media last year. I know there's a lot of parents in here tonight. We really rely heavily on our community. These things pop up on social media, so it may not be something that kids see in school right away, or if it's something that happens overnight, not during school hours. We rely heavily on our community to report these events. If they see something, just let us know. If it's nothing, it's nothing. I mean, it may not be a real threat. It may just be some kid being silly online, thinking it's funny, and at least let us try to figure that out. We're not trying to, hem these kids up and, charge them with everything under the sun and throw the book at them. That's not what we're trying to do. We're really trying to keep our school system safe. I've got a son that goes to an Albemarle County school as well, and I want to keep him safe, and I want to keep all of our kiddos safe at our schools. So all the parents listening, hey, just keep monitoring your kids for us, please. Monitor their online presence, and let us know if you see anything that just gives you the heebie-jeebies or gets that spider sense going.
And Dr. Dunn, if I could just add too, for years we've had a protocol that's a written protocol for bomb threats that all of our school people, if they have a phone in their presence, whether it's the office, they have access to that protocol on how to deal with that particular threat. So yes, I mean, we just what Dr. Haas said, we actually have that in place.
And this next question is kind of a follow-up to that. So how can parents be informed of what steps are taken in schools in the event of an active shooter? So, I assume that the question is, since those plans are not public, that perhaps it's better worded as what can parents know related to schools' plans for crisis situations like an active shooter.
And I will say that I know everybody wants to know what are police, fire, school staff going to do when something happens at our school if we have an active shooter. The reason we don't release tactics for these types of scenarios is it really goes to the safety of our students and our staff and our officers there. We don't want everybody knowing exactly how we're going to enter a building and go and search methodically for a person. We don't like to share those tactics, and that's really something we share with school staff, admin, and personnel that are going to be on scene.
Thanks, Detective Schneider. And I think maybe back to Mr. Nelson. What specific training do school professionals and students receive around student conflict resolution and mediation between students to prevent conflicts from escalating? And how is this evaluated on ongoing, on an ongoing basis for success?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can answer the first part of the question very easily. So for mediation training, part of our safety coaches program is they've all gone through mediation training. It's a 16-hour course where they learn all the different tips and tactics to facilitate mediation between two students. Not only have our safety coaches have gone through this training. Also, all of our SEL counselors have gone through this training too, to provide the best possible outcomes for students in mediating discourse between students. For the evaluation purposes of that, that's much harder to judge. We do continue to offer continued professional development for the staff to look at our larger outcomes. In both of our safety coaches and our SEL counselors are both new programs. It is something I'm continuing to monitor throughout the years to show a larger impact, and that's something I hope to be able to present sooner than later.
Thank you so much for that. And I think this next will be our last question for the evening, as we're pretty close to the end of our time. So I will throw one more time into the chat, just the email address that you are all encouraged to use to send. I know we have a few questions that will not have been answered. Please feel free to send those to the address that I put in the chat in just a moment here. So next question, is there a no vape, no smoking, et cetera policy in schools? If so, how is it enforced?
My presumption is we're talking about students, staff. Well,
I assume students.
yes, that smoking is not allowed at any of our schools. Okay, and in terms of our students, the majority of our students are not legally old enough to smoke. But even if they were, we don't allow smoking at our schools, at events, not on the property.
Thank you so much, Dr. Turner. So we have kind of run to the end of our time here, and I'm just trying to put in the chat box, both in Spanish and in English. You can see that we have the email address that you can use for further information in there. And just briefly to close, and I am going to hand it off to Dr. Eric Irizarry in a moment here, but I just want to thank our panelists for their time. Lauren Hunt, Ayana Mitchell for helping with questions, Dr. Haas for being here, as well as Daphne Kaiser and Eric Irizarry, who will both have spoken by the end of the session. As I mentioned earlier, we have recorded this session. We will send it out to the community, to the entire schools community, but it'll also be up on our YouTube channel, so you will have access to it. I cannot encourage you enough to email the email address that's in the chat that I'm going to put in there one more time. With that, I will send you over to Dr. Eric Irizarry, who's the Director of Equity, Family, and Community Relations for ACPS.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Dunn. And I hope everyone here found this community information session helpful and informative. And again, I'd like to thank the panel and everyone for their time tonight. ACPS, we believe that we're stronger when we work closely with our community partners, and just seeing the panel tonight shows how important our community partners are in making our school environment safe and effective. And empowering our communities is our second goal in our strategic plan. And it really talks about developing a culturally responsive environment for our students, our staff, and families, so we can empower them to engage in our school community. So for the folks that are on this call or watching this webinar, I encourage you to stay involved. If you're interested in volunteering or partnering, please visit our community engagement website or scan the QR codes in this presentation or on your screen right now. We're happy to say we've had an outpouring of volunteers this year. We're over 1,500 volunteers in our schools, and we have over 100 community partners willing to work with our school system and just become valuable partners. One of our priorities is to host more information sessions like this throughout the year. So as we continue to plan these events, we would love your input on potential upcoming events. So that same email address that you're putting your questions in, if there's a topic you'd like us to cover, please email, send an email to that address and we'll take a look at it. And again, we want these community sessions to be about topics you want to hear about. And we'll do our best to bring national, local, and school experts to our panels to provide that information for you. So again, all these materials will be available on our website, and they will be emailed as soon as they're prepared. And again, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, and thank you so much.
Thank you all again for a fantastic session this evening. Thanks.